Good evening again, everyone. We're going to bring this subject here, this topic, from seed to fruit. What this is about personal growth, personal development, evolution, getting into perfection. That's the whole idea of starting with a seed and growing all the way as a tree and generating fruits at the end. So it is about how to get to perfection. Perfection is such an important part of Spiritism that this topic is in 2 full chapters in 2 of the 5 books of the basic Spiritism, the codification. So 2 chapters out of 2 of the 5 books. And Kardec and the spirits that helped him write the codification made it very clear that we need to understand this, because that's where we want to get. We're all going to get there one day, but if we don't know how, it's like Alice in the Wonderland, right? Which way should I go? Where are you going? I don't know. So it doesn't matter. It matters to us. We need to know which way. So again, this then is about perfection. So we're going to start trying to understand perfection. What is this thing? Obviously, it's a path that we have to take. And we're going to go through good times and bad times. It's a journey that's going to take us somewhere. We need to understand how to follow somebody's steps. Somebody's being Jesus. He left the steps on the sand. We need to understand that this is the way. We can't go this way. We can't go that way. It's that way. So our getting there, following the path, it's a result of 2 things, moral progress and intellectual progress. At times, we do more of the moral progress and less intellectual. Other times, we do the other way around. This is a whole set of different incarnations. It's a incarnation after incarnation. So each one of these steps in there might represent an incarnation. And like I said, at times we are more prone to work on one than some other times the other. But we need to work on both. We need to perfect on both. First thing we need to understand is that perfection is not an objective. What does it mean? It means this. If I come to you here and I say, I want to go to the beach on Saturday, that's an objective. And it's in my mind, okay, I'm going to go to the beach on Saturday. So what do I have to do tonight to make it happen on Saturday? Nothing. What do I have to do Thursday afternoon to make it happen? Nothing. What do I have to do on Friday night to make it happen? Nothing. And then Saturday morning, I wake up and I'm all set to go. When I look out, it's raining real bad, and I can't go to the beach. So what's going to happen is in a smaller scale, it's a conflict, because everything was set to go. I was all set to go. I didn't have to do anything. It was all prepared for me. And then it's time to do it, and it won't happen, because what doesn't let me do it is not coming from inside. It comes from outside. The weather, whatever it is, traffic, whatever it was that didn't let me go to the beach on Saturday, came from outside. It didn't come from inside. That for us, that it generates conflicts. Okay? So being to the beach on Saturday is an objective. When we see things as an objective, there are external factors. Most of them are external. We barely have control on this. So if we see perfection as an objective, we're going to be waiting for us to be perfected by somebody else one day. So I can get to the point that I'm going to say, my New Year's resolution for 2014 is, on January 2nd, I'm going to be perfect. It's not going to happen. Because if I get to say this, I'm looking at perfection as an objective. It's not. Perfection is a process. Perfection is a very complicated process with something like you see here. And you go this, and you make a decision here, and you follow that path. Then you find out it's wrong. You got to come all the way back here to make the decision again. Then you make this decision. There's another decision here, and you make the wrong decision. You're going to find out later. You come back all the way back. It's a whole complicated process. That's why we need so many lives, so many incarnations, because we're doing choices at times. They are not leading to the right path. And when we find out, we got to come back and redo these choices. Think about what we did. Think about the choice that we made, why it was wrong, and follow a different path. So when we see perfection as a process, then it makes more sense. And not only that, Whose responsibility is that now? It's all mine. It's 100% me. Nothing from outside is going to make me perfect. I'm the one who are fully responsible for this thing. So if I see as a perfection, it's the old victimization thing. I'm just victim. I'm not perfect. Because of this, because of that, because of you, because of him, because of her. We're going to blame everybody. If we see perfection as a process, as Spiritism teaches, that's responsibility. So that's the difference between victimization and responsibility. So we need to see perfection as responsibility, and we are told in the Spirit's book very clearly that we start down here, all the way down, that's the seed, simple and ignorant, and we're going to grow all the way to angelical perfection state. And this is the journey. Those are all the steps that we see. Spirit's book tells us very clearly, question 115, God has created all spirits simple and ignorant, meaning with no knowledge. Simple has to do with the physical part. For example, we are not simple because our physical organism is extremely complex. Medicine has been studying the body and they're not even halfway through. That's what the meaning of simple is. Each spirit is given a mission with the aim of enlightening them and progressively, little by little, I won't wake up tomorrow morning being perfect, progressively leading them through towards perfection through the knowledge of the truth. That's another interesting thing. So we come from here to here, and we're only going to get to the top once we know the truth. Did we hear that before? Know the truth, and truth will liberate you, right? So the whole thing is about then knowing the truth. If I know the truth, if I follow that truth, I'm following the way that's going to lead me to where I want to get. So in order to study this, you study the truth, to understand the truth within these two extremes here, we need to talk about certain things here. Okay? Most of these things, vices and virtues, we hear this every day in Spiritism. We hear this every week. But if we do not align our thoughts, I can't take any conclusions. So we need to align our thoughts. So we're going to take this and make a complete study of all these things here on the top, as you see. Okay, so let's start talking about vices real quick. We classify for only because we want to study vices, so we grouped vices in two categories: vices of the body, vices of the soul. In theory, they are not two separate things. We know that. Joanna de Angelis' spirit, through the mediumship of Divaldo Franco, tells us a very interesting passage in this book. Joanna de Angelis answers questions, and this is what she says: in all vicious dependencies, in all, okay, there is always, in all meaning, nothing is excluded, okay? In all vicious dependencies, there is always a stabbing, obsessive force. So there's something that's, it puts pressure on us at the spiritual level, through which perverted and addicted beings who have lived mistakenly on earth, based on a natural process of vibrational patterns. If there's a process of vibrational patterns, I am allowing that to take place. We are signing a contract. So I sign down here, my obsessor or whoever is influencing me signs down here, and we're all set to go. So it bonds to creatures, sometimes being the cause of all illness. So in theory, in short words, what she's saying is, vices of the body are consequences of something that takes place at the soul level, at the spiritual level. Okay? Spirit Emmanuel tells us that health is the perfect harmony of the soul. So if the soul is not in perfect harmony, we're going to have bodily consequences. Okay? All right, so what are these vices of the soul then? There's a million. I listed some of them here, I think 8 or 9. So hatred, resentment, envy, revenge, impatience, and all of these things. And once again, these things are not located outside of us. None of them. None of them is located outside. They are all located inside. So automatically, when we recognize, we have to recognize that. When we recognize that these things here are located inside, I just shifted from objective from victimization to responsibility. Then I can take responsibility on these things being with me, inside me, and I'm going to work on them. I'm going to do some sort of therapy or some spiritual work, but I'm going to work on them. But I need to accept that these things are in me, that I'm impatient not because of him. I'm impatient just because I am impatient. It's part of my nature. I am dishonest not because of the bank that has a lot of money. I am dishonest because I am dishonest, and period. And so and so. So we need to accept these things. If we don't accept, we can't go on the path, because that's a pre-requirement to go on the right path. Acknowledge all these things. They're all inside of us. Now, when we look at all these things, on purpose I left this one right down here in the bottom where we are standing, because that's the bad one. That's the critical one, selfishness. That's where all the vices stand up from. That's the cause of all the vices. So we, at times, we are totally taken by selfishness. At times we don't see it, but we are just like that. We are trying to survive because of our selfishness. We just don't perceive it that way. So we need to talk about this a little bit so we can probably open our minds to perceiving that we are living selfishness and we're not taking care of things. In the Spirit's book, two very interesting passages. Question 785, Kardec asks the highly evolved spirits, what is the greatest obstacle to progress? We're talking about progress here, moral progress. So I want to know what makes it hard, what makes it difficult. And the answer is pride and selfishness. So these are two things that we as spiritists need to understand, concentrate, and work on. And the other passage on the Spirit's book, in response to one of the questions, the highly evolved spirits say, all of humans' imperfections, okay, the most difficult to uproot is selfishness. So this is the most difficult one to overcome. And we know that. It's not news for us. But we might not be paying or placing our attention on this thing, and it keeps growing and going and growing. And it's not making us any good. I like to say, I usually say this, that pride and selfishness, especially in the Western civilization, these things are epidemic. And what I mean by epidemic is, let's say, for example, that I live in a house, okay? And there's a neighbor, and the house next door is empty. There's nobody there. And here I am. I'm all happy, and everything is good. Everything is great. I'm very happy. Suddenly, somebody else moves in here, okay? But this guy has got a nice car, much better than I do. And he hurts me. And I'm going to say, how come this guy now has a much better car than I do, a 2013 car? So I'm going to have to get something better than him, because this is hurting me. So I go out and get something better. And then this neighbor is going to say, hey, wait a minute. Now, this guy has a nice car. This guy has a nicer car. I'm supposed to get something even better. This is the idea of contagious, epidemic. Okay? If this guy had never moved in, this wouldn't happen. So we go into trouble. In this case, it would be some sort of financial trouble, if you will. But this is just an example. So we get in trouble, not necessarily because of us, because we believe in contagious, and we live in an epidemic society, and we don't know how to detach from it. It's very difficult. That's what the spirits say. It's very hard to overcome certain things. So in a health epidemic situation, what do we do? So we got some area that is infected with some sort of viruses or so. So the health department, health authorities will go to the area, evaluate the situation. They will isolate the area, take medicine, treat people, send people to the hospital, and nurses and so on and so. So after maybe a month or so, everything is taken care of. And we're all set to go. We can live our lives. Now, who is the health authority that's going to fix this? You see, it can't come from outside. The solution is not going to come from outside, because to fix this, we need to change inside. We have to take responsibility. We have to take our hands on this thing. This is a hands-on job. This is not a let me hear the solution job. So it's completely different than the health epidemic situation. It's us. This is our responsibility, 100%. When this guy comes in with a car, I have to change my attitude. Instead of just going out and buying a new car and have new debts and everything else and hurt my finances, why can't I just be happy about it? Why can't I just wish him good luck with the car? And that's one of the problems that we have. And our society supports this kind of behavior, epidemic behavior, which makes it even more challenging. Okay, so it would be nice if we were going to work on selfishness and things like this. It would be nice if we could rank our selfishness. Let's say from 0 to 10. Where am I? 0 being I'm totally selfish, 10 being I'm not selfish. So if I determine, for example, that I'm number 2, that's pretty bad, right? If I'm able to determine that I'm number 9, that's pretty good. And I know where I am, so I can work more or less on this thing. Now, can we quantify selfishness? Can we give ourselves a grade from 0 to 10? Well, we can't. It's not something that's possible. But we can do similar to this, okay? Let me give you some thought here. Just think about us here on the planet Earth. The planet is orbiting with other planets around the sun. That's our solar system. Our entire solar system with other entire solar systems will orbit around a star, another star. This a constellation. This constellation with other constellations is going to spin around another bigger nebula. Several nebulas will spin around a supernebula and so and so and so. Can you think about the size of this thing? You look up at the skies, and we know that's a science number. We have 300 billion, billion observable galaxies, not planets, galaxies. Each galaxy has 200 billion suns. That's what we can tell. We can't tell more than that. So when you think of something of this magnitude, and you look at your neighbor and you're worried about his car, it kind of doesn't make sense, right? Yeah, I'm concerned about the dress that she's going to go in a party with. We got to change perspectives. That's too small for something like this. So either we are living a very small life, or we have to change and live a bigger life, something much more broad. Now, when you think of all of this, the universe and the size of the universe and so and so and so, what happens is that the size of the universe that we see is relatively small. Here's an example. Let's say I consider myself the most handsome man in the world. Okay, I know you're better than me, but let's just say. And then suddenly, El Terry comes to me and say, Luiz, I think you're wrong, because there's this guy in California, he's something. He's Brad Pitt, he's something. And I can say, well, that's not really, it doesn't matter. I'm talking about Florida. And he'll come to me and he'll say, I think you're wrong, because in Miami there's somebody really, the guy is really something. And I'll say, but I'm talking about Orlando. And then it's going to get to a point that I'm going to have to tell you, of all people that I know, I'm the most handsome one speaking right here, right now. That means I had to reduce the size of the universe to a one-man size. So what we do is we have 7 billion universes living on the planet. Each one of us is an isolated universe. Instead of being integrated and living together, each one of us has a firewall around it, and we're all independent universes that clash all the time. Keep clashing all the time, because this is my universe. Oh, you want to take my universe away? What do you want? So, and then we clash all the time. So what is the size of our selfishness? It depends on the size of my universe. If somebody comes to us and say, there was an accident in, let's just say, Japan, there was a tsunami in Japan, and we had 200 people died. Some people will be, oh my God, let's do some prayer. Let's try to get together, do some prayer for these people. They're hurting, they're going through difficult times, the family members and everybody else. Or you can just say, but that's in Japan. So you see the size of the universe. the size of my universe is inversely proportional to the size of my selfishness. The more selfish I am, the smaller my universe is, and vice versa. The bigger my universe is, the less selfish I am. So we cannot quantify from 0 to 10, or 10 to 0, if you will. But we know for ourselves, it's between us and our consciousness. We know where we are because we know the size of our universe. And that's what we need to start changing, the boundaries of our universe. They have to go, much further away from where it is today. So we can barely help people right now because they're not part of my universe. I can't help certain things because they're not part of my universe. I can't do certain things because that doesn't belong to my universe, because my universe is just this little thing around us. That's pretty sad, but that's what we believe in. So have this in mind, the size of the universe. How do you see the universe? How do you see life? You live in a small life like this, in a tiny, tiny universe, or you live in the life? Okay, so let's jump from vices to virtues. Obviously, we want to know what is the virtue. So Kardec asks the spirits, these highly evolved spirits, what is the most meritorious of all of them? And the answer is there is not such a thing, as long as you have one that is what they call disinterested charity. That would be the one. So it is different for different people. It's not a set in stone, a black and white answer. It depends on your history. It depends on our spiritual history. It depends on this lifetime's history. It depends on a lot of things. So and that's also from the Spirit's book, as we start practicing these virtues here, the vices are going to start to disappear. We're going to start replacing vices with virtues. So things like selfishness is going to give way to charity. Pride is going to give way to humility, and so and so and so. Because I can't have both. You see, when you buy, let's say, pride, when you buy pride stock in Pride Inc., okay, you can't buy at the same time stock on Humility Inc., because they don't go together. It's either or. If you have stock in humility and you want to buy pride, you have to sell humility first. You need to let go of humility, and then you buy pride. So if we buy pride, automatically, we didn't buy humility. If we buy selfishness, automatically, we didn't buy charity, and so on. So it's either or. There's no way to do both together. These are mutually exclusive events, selfishness and charity. And here's what the Spirits say in question 917 of the Spirit's book. Selfishness is the source of all vices, and charity is the source of all virtues. So that's it. This is the great dichotomy. This is the great duality that we need to work on. If you are working here, we can't work in there. I belong to one of the sides. Okay, I partner with one of the sides. And here's the next thing that the Spirit's book tells us. True Spiritists, that's actually the gospel. We recognize true Spiritists by their efforts to overcome evil inclinations. What is evil inclinations? The vices. All of these things here, a whole list. All centered or supported by selfishness. What we want to do is get rid of all these things and replace with virtues, which is supported by charity. So that is the great step. And that's not a step that we do in one lifetime. It's many, many, many lifetimes, as we know. It's not news to any of us. So with the understanding of vices and virtues, we can start taking some conclusions. We can start maybe going towards perfection a little bit more. So perfection is about moral development. We know that. On the Spirit's book and in the Gospel, Kardec, and the Spirits, with Kardec, they make mentions to references to inferior and superior spirits. So some of the spirits are more advanced, morally speaking, some are less. And I see this like a group of people, let's say, for example, 500 people, just walking on the beach, 500 people. So I'm here in the middle. There are a lot of people in front of me, and there are a lot of people on my back, still following me back here. So this is the same thing, morally speaking, spiritually speaking. These people that are ahead of me, these are people that already have gone through what I'm going now. They passed it. Somehow they got past that. I'm still stuck in here. Now, these people that have more than us, morally speaking, we see these people as enemies. We call these people enemies, although it's not. Now, what about these people back here? It depends on the size of my universe. I can help them or not. Depends on the size of my universe. If my universe is tiny, 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 I don't care. They don't belong to my universe. If my universe is a little more not so much restricted, yeah, I'm going to help some of them. And these are the people that we here in the Spiritist Center do this all the time, right? We bring people in, we do counseling, we do all this work for these people behind of us. People who are suffering things that we already know what they are because we've been there, done that, right? So the thing about the people in front of us is that they are nothing more than instruments for our moral development. These are the people I need to learn from. So instead of seeing them as friends or somebody that can help me get better or understand something that I'm not understanding, no, I confront them by targeting or labeling them as enemies. And they're not. Absolutely not. So, and the other thing that Kardec mentions with the spirits in talking about moral development is the problem with the authority. Okay, the challenge of authority. So we're going to take him, right, and we're going to ask, did he have the authority? All of it, 100%, right? How many slaves did he have? None. How many people did he beat on? None. How many people did he kill? None. How many people did he make some sort of bad things to? None. So is it possible to have authority with ethics and moral standards? Yes, but we don't do that. That is why we have to follow that path. He left the footsteps for us to follow. He did it. We can't too. We can't too yet. But he did it. And why did he do it and we can't? Because my universe is this size. So I'm the full-blown authority of this universe here. And when you clash with me, what do you mean if I'm the full-blown authority here? So that's how we see ourselves. The size of our universe is too small. Okay? So he didn't do any of the things that we do with the power he had. We're not doing the same thing he did. Okay, then we saw right in the beginning that the vices of the soul will at times cause what we call vices of the body. So there's an integration between the spirit and the body here. And in this book, I don't think it's ever translated in English, not yet. Thought and Life would be. Spirit Emmanuel tells us something very, very interesting. These are his words, not mine. Okay, I'm taking the words as they are. What it says is this: we have all these vices that we saw in the beginning, that set of vices and revenge and everything bad, pride and selfishness, and we keep practicing these things, life after life, incarnation after incarnation. So there's a point where we can't take it anymore. It is just too much. So we go into a process that I call moral implosion. We just, I can't take this anymore. We can't stand ourselves anymore. After a certain number of lifetimes doing the same thing, we can't stand it. What Emmanuel says is, if you've been practicing pride all over incarnation after incarnation, every single day of your life, every single second of your life, 4 things are going to happen. Number 1, depression. So depression, for him, it's a consequence of practicing pride or being all proud throughout many lifetimes. Number 2, ulceration. That gets to the physical level already. Number 3, emotional imbalance, which is the bipolars, for example, or any sort of neurological driven imbalance. And number 4, cellular dysfunction. What is cellular dysfunction? Cancers, diabetes. These are degenerative diseases. And then if we take this information here, let's say we take this information here, we get the book, and we show this to a medical doctor, conventional medical doctor, or a science guy. They're going to laugh at us because they're going to say, well, where's the proof? Where's his work? What kind of lab work did he do? What experiments did he do? So it doesn't apply for science. Until recently, when things started to change. There's a doctor who lives in Brazil. He's from Paraguay. He lives in Brazil, Dr. Javier Gamara. And he's about maybe 60 now. But when he started his practice as a homeopathic therapist. Just a parenthesis here. When you go to the conventional commercial doctor, you're going to spend 5 minutes with them because they're going to ask you, where's the pain? And you're going to say, right here. Oh, here's your Tylenol. I'll see you next time. Because it's treated at the physical level. So it doesn't really matter who you are, what you think of life. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant for that particular event. Now, if you go to homeopathic therapist, that's a whole different story. On the first consultation, you're going to spend 2 hours with them, maybe 3. And the reason is they don't treat the physical body. They treat what they call the energetic body for us. It's a perispirit. It's the same thing, different names. In order to treat your perispirit, he needs to know, okay, where's the pain? Right here. Okay. Now, let me understand how you see life. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? In a situation like this, how do you react? When you were a kid, how did you do this? How do you do this now? So he's trying to get an understanding of the intelligent principle, what the intelligent principle thinks, not the body. When they are able to get this picture out of yourself, because you're responding to all these questions, then he knows who you are. And that's how homeopathic therapists work. This guy that I mentioned to you, he is one of these. He is considered one of the 5 best in the world. And when he was in his early days in the practice, he started noticing something which was, to say the least, very troublesome for him, very challenging for him. All the patients that came with some form of cancer, any form of cancer, he was able to find that these people had 2 things in common, or they all had these things in common, hatred or resentment. Unresolved cases of hatred and resentment. All the people who showed up in his office with kidney problems had some sort of envy, unresolved envy situation. And all the people who showed up with arthritis had some sort of unresolved pride situation. And so this is many years ago. So he said, well, that's interesting. I'm getting a pattern here. I'm getting a pattern. So he invested his energy, his effort, and his time into finding more about this pattern. And obviously, he made it all his research led to this. This here today, it is accepted for most of the doctors, commercial, conventional doctors. It is accepted. It might not be a full-blown truth for science, written science, but it is accepted for most of the doctors. They know this now. So what the science tells us today, now this is the science part. Now Emmanuel, who is this guy? Now things are changing because we're getting the very same conclusion from different angle, but we're getting to the same thing that we were told 45, 50 years ago. So what science is telling us is all these degenerative diseases, okay, they have 2 things that will make it happen. And you have to have these 2 things, otherwise it doesn't happen. First is what we call the predisposing factor. Predisposing factor is organic. It has to be in my body, a certain condition that's going to generate, let's say, diabetes or cancer or bipolar, something in my body, in my genetics, has to be there. Now, that's not the only thing that makes it happen. There's a second factor, which is called the triggering factor. And the triggering factor are all these things that we practice, all these vices that we practice. So let's look at the situation here. Let's analyze each side separately. This side here, the right side here, the triggering factor. How much am I responsible? From 0 to 100%, how much am I responsible for this thing? 100%. All right? Nobody practices my vices and make me sick. It's me. It's 100% me here on the right side. Now let's go to the left side, okay? How much am I responsible for the predisposing factor? Well, it's based on DNA. It's based on my organics, right? On my biology. Why do I have the DNA that I have? Was it because God played lotto and it came out that way? It's because of my spiritual history, right? So how much am I responsible here? 100%. So how much am I responsible here? 100%. So it's not that I got this because of him, because of her, because of my son, because of my dad, because of the neighbor, because of the president. It isn't. It isn't. It's 100% responsibility, 0% victimization. That has to be clear for us. If we're talking about perfection, if we want to understand perfection, it needs to be very clear. I can't start blaming people because I have this and I have that. No. I have this because it's my history. I created it. It's me and myself only. There's nobody else. Now, can we do a self-evaluation of ourselves in terms of moral progress? Where am I in between simple and ignorant and perfection? Is it possible to do a self-evaluation? St. Augustine tells us in the Spirit's book, the very famous question 919. It's already so known to us Spiritists that it runs on our blood. But what it says is, you have to do what I did when I was incarnated. You have to, at the end of each day, that's a suggestion. That's what he said he was doing himself. At the end of the day, you just go to sleep, you lay down, and you just quickly rerun the day. And you just pick up things that you did and you shouldn't have done. Oh, I shouldn't have told him this. Maybe tomorrow I'll go back and, tell him, oh, I'm sorry, and so and so and so, and apologize for things. This is what his suggestion is. So let's say, for example, I go to sleep tonight, and I go in bed, and I quickly run my day, and I say, wow, I had a meeting with my boss today, and I told him something that it wasn't nice. I really didn't do good. I'm going to go back tomorrow and, apologize. And I do. Then 3 days later, I'm going to run my day again, and, I had a meeting with my boss, and I told him something I shouldn't have, something else. And then I'm going to apologize. And then 5 days later, I had a problem with my boss today. And 10 days later, I had a problem with my boss today. So is this helping? Yes, because it's lifting the problem. It's bringing the problems up. It's red flagging the problems. But I have to do something. I can't just lay down every night and say, yeah, I did this again. And tomorrow, I did this again. And tomorrow, and the day after, I did this again. And the next day, I did this again. I have to do something. I have to take action. Learning from it is one thing. Taking action is another thing. I can tell myself 10 days straight, I had a fight with this guy because of this. 10 days straight. But if I don't do anything, I'm being a victim. I'm not being responsible. If I want to be responsible, I need to bring the problem into my hands. So I need to do something so I don't fight with him anymore or with her anymore. So this is good, but we have to take action. How do we take action? Because we want to know. We want to get to perfection. So how do we take action? Then we need to understand something called dualities. That's, I think, it's what's going to help us understand. Dualities it's a study that for 5,000 or 6,000 years, the Eastern philosophies have been studying deeply. And in the Western civilizations, it is not something that we do. We are more concentrated on materialistic things, determinism. We don't study this. The first man to bring this in a more, I would say, robust way was René Descartes in 1640, and we abandoned that. We don't do anything. After 400 years after him, we didn't do this. What is this concept of dualities? I wrote down here, binary opposing principles that cannot exist without each other. Too complicated. This is what it is. Nah, too complicated. It's nice, beautiful, yeah, oh, wow. Yeah, wow doesn't explain, okay? Let's try to understand. This is what it means. Anything that has an opposing principle Okay, for example, life and death. If I'm alive, I'm not dead. If I'm dead, I'm not alive. But one doesn't exist without the other. Good and bad. If I'm good, I'm not bad. If I'm bad, I'm not good. But one doesn't exist without the other. You getting the idea? Okay? So that's what duality is opposing principles that live together. One does not exist without the other. Okay? So some examples here. Life and death, heaven and hell. In the spiritist concept or in the classic concept, if you're in heaven, you're not in hell. If you're in hell, you're not in heaven. One doesn't exist without the other. That's the general idea of dualities, okay? And how is dualities gonna help us understand and get out of the trouble that we are in? So let's try to think about this a little bit more. It all starts right here in this phrase. The physical plane, where we are right now, incarnate, is dualist by default. What does it mean? It means this. Let's say, for example, many incarnations ago, I was a big criminal. And I've been working on it. And I'm getting better. I'm getting better. On the past life, all I did was take some candies from the next door store. But I still did. And I came to this life with the purpose of never doing it again. And from now on, I'm just going to change. I'm never going to do this again. Honesty 100%. That's the purpose of my life right now. Okay, so I get over here, and I'm working on it, and I'm being challenged at times. And then suddenly Livia comes here, and she puts $1,000 here and leave me alone in the room. And then I'm going to go, wow, $1,000. I could take 20 here. I could take a little bit. I could do something with this money. And it all starts running in my head. Even if I don't take the money, it's all spinning in my head. So what I'm living is a huge conflict, okay? Now, if I had transcended the duality, honesty, dishonesty, I would never have this kind of behavior. I'm having this kind of behavior because dishonesty is still a possibility. The day that I transcend completely the duality, honesty, dishonesty, I'm going to look at that money, I'm going to say, wow, somebody lost that money. The person might be desperate. Let's get somebody to help me. Livia, can you help me here? Find the person who lost this money. They might be desperate. The day I do this, I transcended the duality, honesty, dishonesty. Another thing, I can be drinking all over the place, incarnation after incarnation, less and less and less and less, and this is the test one. This is the test one. From now on, I came with the purpose of not drinking anymore from now on. Okay? And then suddenly somebody puts a whiskey here, right? Big bottle of whiskey. And I go like, wow. Oh my God, just this little bit. What's happening? I have not transcended the duality, alcoholism, sobriety. Because if I had, my behavior would be, wow, somebody left a big bottle of whiskey here. I better take it out because there are some people here that will come to this bottle. It's going to make damage. So let's put it away. It wouldn't even cross my mind the possibility of myself having it. The day that I transcend that duality. So what is happening when we transcend dualities? Let's say the money thing, okay? Honesty, dishonesty. When I transcend that, this side, dishonesty, doesn't exist anymore. Now it's only honesty. So what happened to the duality? It disappeared, right? So it's no longer a possibility of doing this or this. It's just this, which is now truth. It's no longer a possibility. The possibilities become truth. As we go along and we learn the truth, first slide, what happens? Isn't about learning the truth that we're going to go from seed to fruit. So that's the trick. To work on the dualities, to find out what our dualities are, and make the choices again and again and again. The right choice is always again and again and again and again. And the duality is going to dissipate by itself. That, all of this that I said here in the last 5 minutes or 10 is this. The physical plane is dualist by default. And why is it? Because I'm here to be on a trial and expiation world. And I'm here to be tested. I need to have a situation in which I have both options, honesty and dishonesty, and I have to make a decision. I need to be in a situation when I'm going to have to choose alcoholism or sobriety, and I have to make a decision. That's why the physical plane has to be, by default, by design, dualist. That's the only way a physical plane for us, in the stage that we are, the moral stage that we are, is going to help us. If we are not tested, if we go to a desert island, all right, that's fine. I'm going to get to 70, 75, 80, I'm going to die, and what? Right? Not a single step towards a better behavior I've made. I need to be on a dualist physical plane. That's the only way that I'm going to have the option to make my choices, to practice my free will. Everything is based on free will. My choices are what's going to define my future, okay? So, and I put this down here. Every duality reveals a conflict. So when she came over here and put the money in, I go like, wow, now I'm in conflict because I have not transcended yet the duality, honesty, dishonesty. And I'm in panic, and I don't know what to do. It's an internal conflict, okay? So the big dualities are, if you think about all vices on one side and all virtues on another side, that's in a large scale. Instead of just honesty and dishonesty, sobriety and alcoholism, let's just do everything, all vices and all virtues. And you go back a few slides back, what are the spirits telling us? We have to replace vices with virtues. What is that? It's replacing honesty with dishonesty with honesty. The minute I do this, honesty becomes the truth. There is no longer a possibility for dishonesty, and so and so and so, with all the vices against all the virtues. Okay? That's what the spirits are telling us on a very large scale. I just gave you 2 examples here. Okay, now, how do we do this? Right? We have to make the right choices. How do we choose always one instead of the other? And usually, the example that I give everybody is this, the sun. If you think about the sun, if you mentalize the sun, okay, right now, maybe not right now, but tomorrow morning, if you mentalize the sun, okay, just think about it. And I'm going to ask you, what time is it night at the sun? It's never night at the sun. And why is that? Why it's never night at the sun? Huh? Light. Let me give you a better answer. The sun is the source of all light. The sun is the source of all light. So I'm going to ask you, when am I going to be in peace? Answer, when I am the source of all peace. There's no possibility for a night here. When am I going to be patient? When I am the source of all patience. When am I going to be honest? When I am the source of all honesty. And then dishonesty dies, the duality dies, honesty becomes the truth. Right? When am I going to be tolerant? When I am the source of all tolerance. So the duality, tolerance, intolerance dies. And intolerance is no longer a possibility, tolerance is the truth. And so on and so on and so on. This is the idea. So it all comes down to us understanding that we have these virtues all inside, but we're not practicing. We're looking for them outside. We've been told, you are gods, right? What is that? We have this sun inside. We can't see it. We don't see it. The divine spark, we don't feel it. So we keep looking for things outside. Now, every time I have to look for virtues outside, it means on that particular subject, it's 3 o'clock a.m. here. It's very dark in the night, and I need to look for that outside. Right? So, for example, at times we're going to say something like this. Oh, I like to be close by this guy always because, oh, he's so patient. That's nice, but what does it tell yourself? That I'm still not the source of all patience. I like to be with this guy because he's so, whatever, honest. What does it mean? I'm still not the source of all honesty. And so on. So you see how the dualities are going to start dissipating? Is it making sense, all this? You know, it's all coming together. It's all, the Spirit tells us one thing here, one thing here, one thing here. I'm just trying to put it all in the same paragraph. We've been told all of this. This is not something that I'm making. So we go out for virtues because we feel that we don't have them. It doesn't mean that we don't. It means we're not using it. That's what makes it, go out to find these things. Now, what about him? How did he do with the dualities when he was incarnate? He didn't have any. He didn't have any. Can you imagine Jesus in this particular situation? Should I be honest or dishonest? What time in the gospel is it written, or where in the gospel is it written that Jesus sat down, started crying and say, nobody loves me, nobody understands me? It's not written because he doesn't need to look for love outside. Love is inside. You see, we look for reputation on other people. Reputation is not even located in us. When we leave here, we got, 30 people? Whatever you think of what this meeting was, it's not going to change who I am. If I'm dishonest, I'm going to still be dishonest. If I'm intolerant, I'm still going to be intolerant. So whatever you think of this is irrelevant for my moral standards. You understand this? Reputation is located outside. So he wasn't looking for any of that. He was just showing love. He wasn't looking for love. He was the source. So we at times will say, well, in order for us to be in peace, the war somewhere else has to come to an end. No, because wars have come to ends and restarted a million times, and we're still unhappy. Okay? We started writing in the year more or less 3500 BC, when the Egyptians were making symbols and hieroglyphs on the walls. From that day, okay, that's about almost 6,000 years. So in 6,000 years if you put together everything, no exception, everything that we wrote in these 6,000 years, 93% of what we wrote is about war. So wars come and go. And that's the end of the war. It's not going to make me in peace. Because peace is not located on a geographical battlefield. Peace is located inside. Peace is not an objective, it's a process. If peace was an objective, the day the two countries that are fighting sign the agreement, that would be it. Oh, now I'm in peace. But it's not. So he didn't do with any duality because he didn't have any. He only had the truth, as we know. And then we come to this book from André Luiz, Spirit André Luiz. Sun in the Souls would be on a free translation. And he tells us one phrase that sums up everything that we spoke so far. This is the phrase. Without temptation, impossible to work towards perfection. What does it mean? It means if you're not on a dualistic physical plane, you cannot even work on it. First of all, you have to have the temptations in front of you, right there, to make the choice. Obviously, you want to make the right choice. That's why we're here to learn. We're here in the Spiritist Center to practice our virtues, to embrace ourselves and have more, I would say, it's not even knowledge, but have more spirituality within us to make a better choice, a choice that's not based on physicality, on materialism, determinism, or anything else. So this is a great phrase. All right. So let me just summarize on a couple of things here. I said in the beginning that we, in the Western civilization, we don't do a lot of work in dualism. But in Spiritism, we do a lot, more than any other Western civilization-based religion, philosophy, and so on and so on. So. But we don't know. Okay, we don't know, like, right in our face. Yeah, we do dualities. We don't even, most of the times, we don't even know what these dualities are, which is what I spoke about here. In Spiritism, it starts with Kardec. He himself, in almost every issue of the Spiritist magazine, and he did one every month for 12 years, almost in every issue, he had at least one article that was touching dualities. We kind of don't pay attention to the Spiritist magazines, the original ones from him. Number two, this is one of the phrases in one of the magazines, the duality of the essence of our soul. So what is it telling us? You are a dualistic being. That's what it's telling me. It's an important principle because it gives us some insight about our real and immortal existence. Right? So all of this that I said, it only makes sense if we consider reincarnation. If you consider life as a one lifetime period, a one-shot deal, and that's it, that doesn't apply. It wouldn't even make sense. And it wouldn't make sense why some people are more, let's say, honest than others, more patient than others, more whatever, peaceful than others. Now, if you look at the works of Emmanuel, not the historical books, but the philosophical books, like the Daily Bread and all of the entire collection of Emmanuel, excluding historical books. His books are like this. Don't do this, do that. Don't steal, help your neighbor. Don't do this, do that. What is this? Right? Don't do this, do this. What is it teaching us? Okay, here's a duality, and I suggest that you make this choice, not this choice. Almost his entire work is based on this. So Spiritism has a lot, much more than any Oriental philosophy, a lot of work based on dualities. We just maybe don't know. Not that we need to know, but I think it's easier if we understand what's happening here. If we can make choices, and when we make a choice, you see, when I make a choice, let's say between, let's go back to the same example to keep it, smooth. Honesty, dishonesty. When I make a choice of being dishonest, okay, the consequences of going into jail and all of those, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about at the moral level. I made a choice, so I'm dishonest. And I start practicing this thing, incarnation after incarnation. I'm not a very advanced spirit, so I keep practicing that. What is happening to me? My truth is here, right? Where is my truth? Also is my treasure. So that's what I'm going to value until I make the right choice. And I can abandon that duality for good. And then I can follow my path. So the books of Emmanuel are all based on this. And then obviously we know question 132, in which Kardec asks the highly evolved spirits why we have to incarnate 1,000,000 times, right? Several times. And here's the answer, because that's how we're going to get perfect. And if we have to give it a more detailed answer, is because in here on the physical plane we are facing all dualities, and we are going to make choices, and all these choices until one day we choose the truth. That's the complex answer, which is everything that we discuss here tonight. All right, so let's just wrap up with some conclusions, some final thoughts. From the Spirit's book, the Gospel. As Christ said, perfection is found entirely on the practice of absolute charity, which is something we saw in the beginning, because charity is the source of all virtues. If we are dealing with vices against virtues, and I need to make the right choices on choosing virtues always, I need to know what is the base of the pyramid. And the base is charity. And here's a phrase by Chico Xavier, the man Chico Xavier, not Emmanuel, himself, okay, the physical person. clean environment is not the one we clean more and more and more and more, but it's the one that we don't stain at all. Okay, what does it mean? It means, okay, we have vices and dualities. Not choosing vices is better than choosing virtues and still do vices. This is what it means. It's a very, very interesting phrase. And this is what I wanted to bring to you today. I think what we need to take home from this is the truth that Jesus says about truth is going to liberate you is because I don't have to face the conflicts anymore. When I have honesty as a truth, I'm not going to be worried about, wow, money here, should I take it, should I not? I'm liberated. I'm liberated. And same for patience, and same for peace, and same for anything that we mentioned here before. Yes?
Luiz, when you talk about duality and truth, it makes me think, and you just mentioned now that truth is going to liberate us. It makes me think when Jesus said, I am the life, the way, and the truth.
That's it.
So it will be a way of seeing this, not just, I think that explains, that's the best explanation for this statement.
Right, and it's...
Truth. There is no duality, I mean peace. This
Right,
is the
and
way.
follow my footsteps, because that's the way, yeah.
That's amazing.
That's what this is all about.
This is super.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Have a good night.